March 7th, 1992, Chicago. The United Center had never held this much anticipation in one room. 22,000 people had been waiting for this night for months, some of them for years. Michael Jackson had been off the road for 3 years. 3 years of silence, of studio work, of letting the world wonder whether the machine that had produced Thriller and Bad still had anything left to say. The Dangerous album had answered that question with a kind of commercial force that stunned even the people who expected it. Now the tour was here. Now the stage was built. Now the lights were on. And Michael Jackson walked out of the darkness, and the United Center came apart at the seams. What the 22,000 people inside that arena did not know, what Michael himself did not know, was that his most dangerous presence that night was not on the stage. He was already in the building. To understand what was about to happen, you need to understand what these two men meant to each other. Not publicly, not in the careful, diplomatic language of press releases and magazine interviews. What they meant to each other privately, in the competitive architecture of their own minds. The rivalry between Michael Jackson and Prince had been running for more than a decade by 1992. It had started as the natural friction between two extraordinary talents occupying the same space at the same time. Both black men redefining what popular music could be, both breaking records, both refusing to be contained by genre or expectation. But over the years, it had become something sharper, more personal, more consuming. Michael was the architecture of popular music, the precision, the universality, the flawless execution of a vision so complete it left no room for argument. His concerts were not performances, they were installations. Every element calculated, every moment placed with surgical intention. Every crowd response anticipated and engineered to land exactly where it was designed to land. Prince was the rupture in that architecture, raw where Michael was polished, confrontational where Michael was inviting, a musician's musician who wrote, produced, arranged, and played nearly everything himself, who released music with a recklessness that made the industry nervous, who treated the stage not as a platform for a planned experience, but as a live wire he touched every night and survived by instinct. Two visions of what greatness looked like. Two men who studied each other the way chess players study opponents, with respect, with intensity, and with the permanent awareness that the other one was always thinking 3 moves ahead. 3 days before the Chicago show, Prince had sat down for a radio interview with WGCI. The comment he made was casual, almost offhand. Almost. I hear Michael's bringing his little dance show to Chicago this week. Maybe I should drop by and show the Windy City what real music sounds like when it isn't packaged for mass consumption. The music industry smiled, rolled its eyes, and moved on. Prince said things like this. It was part of his mythology, the provocateur who couldn't resist poking at the establishment, even when he was the establishment. Nobody took it seriously as a statement of intent. That was a mistake. Carlos Rivera had worked security for Prince for years, and he knew better than almost anyone what it looked like when Prince was performing for the press, and what it looked like when Prince was genuinely preparing for something. This was the second thing. Prince was consumed with the idea that the world had crowned Michael king and left him as a footnote. Carlos said in a 2001 interview, he respected Michael's craft completely, more than he ever admitted publicly. He had studied Michael's tour footage from the European dates frame by frame, not to mock it, to understand it, to find the exact moment where he could walk in and change the story. What Prince had assembled over the preceding weeks was remarkable in its detail. He had obtained information about the United Center's layout, its backstage access points, its security rotations. He knew Michael's set list. He knew the stage design. He had identified the precise section of the concert during Billie Jean, during the moonwalk sequence in the instrumental break, where the crowd's attention would be most unified, most electric, most primed for interruption. He had not come to Chicago to watch. He had come to issue a challenge in front of 22,000 witnesses and a live television broadcast that was reaching audiences across the Midwest. Prince arrived at the arena 4 hours before showtime. He entered through channels that kept his name off every official guest list. His team positioned him in a premium VIP box, visible from the stage if you knew where to look, partially concealed from the general floor. He dressed in a custom-fitted purple jacket with intricate beadwork that caught arena lighting the way only something designed specifically for that purpose could. He sat down, and he waited. For 90 minutes, Prince watched in absolute silence. People who noticed him in the VIP section later described the quality of his attention as something almost unsettling. He was not enjoying the show. He was not nodding along or mouthing lyrics or doing any of the things that audiences do when music moves them. He was studying, reading every gesture Michael made, every transition between songs, every moment where the crowd's energy peaked or dipped, the way a surgeon reads a patient's vital signs before deciding where to cut. He was looking for the moment. And then Billie Jean began. The United Center transformed. 22,000 voices locked onto the opening bass line with a kind of collective recognition that only the most iconic music in the world can produce. The song had been doing this for a decade, reaching into rooms and turning strangers into a unified body, every person suddenly moving with the same pulse. Michael was deep into the performance, crossing the stage with a controlled tension that made his dancing look both effortless and impossible. Moving into the moonwalk during the instrumental section, Prince stood up, slowly, deliberately, and began to clap. Not with the crowd, against it, a slow rhythmic counterbeat that anyone who had ever seen Prince perform would have recognized immediately. It was a gesture with a specific meaning in his vocabulary. Impressive, but let me show you what impressive actually looks like. Michael Jackson had spent 30 years developing an almost supernatural sensitivity to crowd energy. He could feel the shape of 22,000 people's attention the way a sailor reads water. Something was different in the room. The applause had a foreign rhythm in it, a deliberate pulse that didn't belong to the song. He looked up toward the VIP boxes, and he saw Prince, standing in full view in his unmistakable purple, slow clapping with that expression, equal parts admiration and challenge. The smile of a man who has been waiting patiently for exactly this moment. Michael continued dancing for several seconds, muscle memory carrying the performance forward while his mind processed what his eyes were telling him. Then he stopped, mid-moonwalk, center stage. He raised his hand and cut the music. The silence that dropped over the United Center was absolute and instantaneous. 22,000 people stopped everything, stopped singing, stopped moving, stopped breathing, and turned their attention to the man standing alone in the spotlight, staring up at a VIP box. The silence held for 45 seconds. In live performance, 45 seconds of silence is a geological age. Finally, Michael raised his microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a very special and completely unexpected guest in the arena tonight. He paused. The one and only Prince. The crowd erupted. Not with the clean roar of a planned moment, but with the jagged, electric energy of 22,000 people realizing simultaneously that something unrepeatable was unfolding in front of them. Michael looked directly up at the VIP box. His voice, when he continued, carried something his audiences almost never heard: the bare edge of competitive fire, unpolished, real, crackling just beneath the surface of his professional composure. "Prince, since you came all the way to Chicago, why don't you come down here and show these people what you think real music sounds like?" Prince smiled, not the polished smile of a man performing for cameras, the real one, the one that people who knew him said appeared only when something genuinely surprised or delighted him. He gave the crowd an elaborate bow, sweeping and theatrical, that managed to be simultaneously respectful and faintly mocking. Then he began making his way down from the VIP section toward the stage. As he moved through the arena, something became apparent that reframed everything that had seemed spontaneous about the evening. His security team, stationed at intervals throughout the building, began moving with the coordinated efficiency of people executing a plan they had rehearsed. They communicated with the United Center's technical staff in real time, coordinating access routes and equipment positioning with a precision that had nothing to do with improvisation. Jennifer Walsh, a senior technical coordinator at the United Center, confirmed it years later. "Prince's people had been in contact with our technical crew for 3 days before the concert," she said in a 2003 interview. "They had brought his favorite guitar, his preferred microphone configuration, and a portable keyboard that could integrate directly into Michael's existing stage setup. Every detail had been worked out in advance. The only thing that hadn't been scripted was what would actually happen between the two of them once Prince reached the stage. That last part, the part nobody had planned, was the part that would matter." The United Center held its collective breath as Prince crossed the arena floor. 22,000 people watched in a silence so complete that the sound of his footsteps was audible in the upper sections. Michael stood center stage, watching Prince approach with an expression that shifted and resettled several times, surprise giving way to wariness, wariness to something that looked almost like anticipation. Prince's equipment was integrated into Michael's stage setup with remarkable speed. The guitar was plugged in, the keyboard positioned, the microphone adjusted. Technical staff moved around the two men with practiced efficiency, while Michael and Prince stood a few feet apart, neither speaking, neither looking away. The crowd watched all of this in near silence. When the setup was complete and the two men were finally standing face to face on the same stage for the first time in years, something happened that nobody, not the crowd, not the crew, not the journalists covering the event, had predicted. The tension between them began to shift, not dissolve, not disappear, but transform, the way pressure transforms when it finds a new direction. Standing that close to each other, without the mediation of press releases or radio interviews, or the carefully constructed public personas they each maintained, Michael Jackson and Prince seemed to arrive at the same recognition simultaneously. They were not enemies. They had never been enemies. They were two people who had spent a decade pushing each other toward the outer limits of what was possible in their field, and neither of them would have reached those limits without the other one existing. Prince spoke first. His microphone was live, and his words went out to every speaker in the building. "You know what? This is kind of ridiculous. We're both at the top of what we do. Let's just make some music and give these people something they'll carry for the rest of their lives." Michael looked at him for a long moment. Then something in his face released. "You're right," he said. His voice had lost the competitive edge that had been in it when he issued the challenge. What replaced it was something warmer, more genuine, more recognizably human. Let's show Chicago what two great artists can build together instead of just trying to tear each other down. The crowd's response was not the explosion of a planned moment. It was something rarer, the sound of 22,000 people exhaling at once, the collective relief of an audience that had been braced for a collision and was being offered something better. What followed lasted 40 minutes. It was not a battle. It was not a competition. It was something neither man had planned for, which was perhaps why it became the thing that people who were in that building would spend the rest of their lives trying to describe accurately. They began with a blues-based improvisation that gave Prince room to demonstrate the guitar work that had made musicians across every genre acknowledge him as something beyond category. His playing was fluid and conversational, moving through the register with the ease of someone thinking out loud, and Michael's vocals wrapped around it instinctively, not leading, not competing, but responding, the way a great conversation responds to what's actually being said, rather than to what was prepared in advance. Then they moved into a funk groove, and the physical dimension of both men's artistry took over. Michael's moonwalk alongside Prince's splits and spins created something that the choreography of either one alone could not have produced. A visual language that belonged to neither of them individually, but emerged from the specific chemistry of both of them sharing the same space at the same time. The crowd had stopped trying to process what they were watching and had simply surrendered to it. Then they played Purple Rain. Michael took the supporting role without hesitation, backing vocals, movement that amplified rather than competed, the physical equivalent of a great musician playing behind a soloist and making the soloist sound like a revelation. The sight of the king of pop giving his full gifts to the Purple One's most intimate song was so unexpected, so genuinely selfless, that something in the arena shifted irreversibly. People wept. Not from sadness, from the particular emotion that arrives when something beautiful happens that you did not think the world was capable of producing. When the final chord faded, both men stood still for a moment. Then Michael Jackson and Prince embraced. A real embrace, full and unhurried, lasting long enough that the crowd understood it was not a gesture for them. It was something the two men needed to give each other, something that had been owed for a very long time. David Chen was covering the concert for Rolling Stone magazine. That embrace, he wrote in his review, was the moment when two of the most gifted artists of their generation recognized something they should have seen years earlier, that the qualities which made them rivals were the same qualities that made them irreplaceable, that what looked like opposition was actually a conversation, and that the music they could make together was something neither could make alone. The bootleg recordings of that 40-minute collaboration began circulating among music industry insiders within hours. Within days, every major music television program and publication was discussing it. Within weeks, it had become the most talked about live performance of that year, possibly of that decade. But the consequences that mattered most were the ones that happened quietly, away from the cameras. Michael and Prince began talking regularly after Chicago, not for the press, not in public. Private conversations between two people who had finally found someone who understood exactly what it felt like to exist at the level they existed at. The pressure of it, the loneliness of it, the specific weight of being expected to be extraordinary every single time, in every single room, for every single person who needed something from you. They collaborated on recordings that were never released, songs that exist only in the collections of a small number of insiders who described them with the reverence usually reserved for things that cannot be adequately explained. When Prince died in April 2016, among the personal items found at Paisley Park was a handwritten letter from Michael Jackson. It had been written shortly after the United Center performance. In it, Michael thanked Prince for reminding him of something he had allowed the machinery of his career to obscure. That music, at its foundation, was about human connection. Not competition, not dominance, not the accumulation of records and achievements and platinum certifications. Connection. There is a commemorative plaque inside the United Center today. It marks the location of the VIP box where Prince stood and issued his challenge on March 7, 1992. It reads simply, "In celebration of the night competition became collaboration. Michael Jackson and Prince. March 7, 1992. Every major artist who performs at the United Center is told the story. Many of them have been moved by it in ways that extended beyond the building, reaching out to people they had been treating as rivals, exploring what might be created from cooperation rather than conflict. The plaque doesn't mention the moonwalk that stopped mid-step. It doesn't mention the slow clap from the VIP box, or the 45 seconds of silence, or the 6 words of challenge that crossed the distance between stage and premium seating and landed like a declaration of war. It only marks the ending, which was also a beginning.